West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy with Chef Justice Putnam. Netrootsradio.com.
Je voudrais du soleil vert, des dentelles et des théières, des photos de bord de mer, dans mon jardin d'hiver. Je voudrais de la lumière, comme en Nouvelle-Angleterre. Je veux changer d'atmosphère, dans mon jardin d'hiver. Ma fleur sous la pluie de novembre, tes mains qui courent, je n'en peux plus de t'attendre. Les années passent, il est loin, là je tombe. Nul ne peut nous entendre. Je voudrais du Fred Astaire, revoir un latte.
The year was 2011. A federal prosecutor and soon-to-be congressman had just released a scathing book about the nation's president. It was called Dreams from Our Founding Fathers, First Principles in the Age of Obama. And its author was one Ron DeSantis, now Governor DeSantis of Florida. In his book, whose title played off of Obama's own best-selling memoir, Dreams from My Father, DeSantis wrote snidely of the then Democratic president, quote, he viewed himself as a figure of supreme historical significance, someone who could usher in a fundamental transformation of the country, a transformation that reflected his own political principles and ideology. Well, that's strange criticism from the governor, considering those close to him seem to be portraying DeSantis right now in the same way. Just days before Election Day last year, his wife Casey tweeted this campaign ad, clearly painting the Florida governor not just as a figure of supreme historical significance, but a figure of biblical significance.
And on the 8th day, God looked down on his planned paradise and said, I need a protector. So God made a fighter. God said, I need somebody willing to get up before dawn, kiss his family goodbye, travel thousands of miles for no other reason than to serve the people, to save their jobs, their livelihoods, their liberty, their happiness. So God made a fighter.
Yes, God sent DeSantis to ban books on his behalf. And it sounds like DeSantis sees himself the same divinely appointed way. Just this past weekend, he graced Fox with his presence and continued prophesizing, suggesting that his anointed self could too usher in a fundamental transformation of this country.
Everyone knows if I'm the nominee, I will beat Biden and I will serve 2 terms and I will be able to destroy leftism in this country.
Ah, yes, destroy leftism. Now, of course, he sounds ridiculous, and it would be easy for me to sit here and just laugh at the nonsense that's coming out of his mouth. But really, there's nothing funny about what DeSantis is saying there. It's actually very dangerous. Listen to what else he says.
Everyone knows if I'm the nominee, I will beat Biden and I will serve 2 terms and I will be able to destroy leftism in this country and leave woke ideology on the dustbin of history.
Destroy leftism and leave woke ideology on the dustbin of history. He's not just saying he wants to take on one group like Antifa or something. He's casting a much wider net. He wants to go after everything he thinks is woke, is a left-wing problem, and destroy it. Everything he doesn't like, from Disney to the Democratic Party. And I don't mean to be a party pooper, but the right doesn't have the best track record when it comes to talking about destroying the left. Just look at Argentina in the late 1970s, where left-wing activists were labeled as terrorists by the junta, and 30,000 people were killed or disappeared. That is, kidnapped and never seen again. Similarly, in Chile, the Pinochet regime killed and disappeared thousands affiliated with Pinochet's socialist predecessor and tortured tens of thousands more. Destroying the left has an ugly history. But right about now, I can hear some of you saying, Mehdi, you're getting carried away. Destroy the left is just a phrase. There's not that much tied up in it. Well, unfortunately, DeSantis isn't the only one who's using this type of dangerous rhetoric. I look forward to the day that Democrats are so rare, we have to hunt them with dogs. That's a quote from the Republican governor of South Carolina, Henry McMaster, last month, and one he's used many times before. Yet there's been no pushback from Republicans about that remark, no shock or condemnation from Kevin McCarthy or Mitch McConnell, nobody. Imagine if President Biden had said anything even close to that. He'd still be apologizing. Joe Biden called MAGA ideology semi-fascism nearly a year ago, and the GOP is still wailing about it. Imagine their 24/7 outrage if President Biden had said he wanted to destroy conservatism or hunt Republicans. And then there's former President Trump's Memorial Day message on his website, Truth Social. He wrote, quote, "We must stop the communists, Marxists, and fascist pigs at every turn and make America great again." Again, could I laugh at Trump and just write off what he says as the deranged babbling of an internet-addicted troll? Absolutely. But it's far past time to take this rhetoric seriously. This language carries a real threat, especially given an atmosphere so charged with right-wing political violence right now. Just last week, a Missouri man flew to D.C., crashed a U-Haul into the White House fence, and waved a Nazi flag, all part of a plan, prosecutors say, to seize power, kill Biden if necessary, and try and end U.S. democracy. All the more reason why the language of demonization and dehumanization must be condemned by everyone and not normalized by anyone. And yet, the top two Republican presidential candidates claim they want to destroy the left being anyone who opposes them. That is the language of pure fascism. Right now in America, you have on the one hand a growing number of angry, paranoid, heavily armed conservatives, and on the other, conservative leaders, Republican presidential candidates no less, who are fanning the flames of that anger and paranoia, turning the heat up, not down. History teaches us that this doesn't end well. In fact, it ends in only one place: political violence and civil conflict. Joining me now is Yale professor Jason Stanley, who literally wrote the book on how fascism works. Jason, thanks for coming back on the show. When you hear this kind of language, destroy the left and the Democrats are pigs, does that worry you? Is it the language of fascism and authoritarianism, or am I being too sensitive, too paranoid?
I think everyone agrees it's the language of fascism. The key thing here is, do we take it seriously? Do we take the rhetoric seriously? The critics of, say, my work didn't disagree that what we were confronting was the language of fascism. And nobody should disagree here that DeSantis and now Trump are amping it up. These are messages to their base, and the political violence of which you speak is a clear probable consequence. But even more worrisome is that these figures, especially DeSantis, are promising a legal framework that will get the state involved. So we're talking about state violence, state action against leftists. And, you know, Martin Niemöller's First They Came For starts with First They Came For the Communists. And that was about the Nazi Party.
And unfortunately, worryingly, it's not just Trump and DeSantis, it's several lawmakers on the far right, like Marjorie Taylor Greene, who said this last fall. Have a listen.
I'm not going to mince words with you all. Democrats want Republicans dead, and they've already started the killings.
They've already started the killings, which is nonsense, of course, but it's what a lot of scholars in your field, I believe, call an accusation in the mirror, right? Falsely accusing your opponents of doing what you, in fact, want to do.
Yes, that genocidal speech traces back to Cleon's speech in the Mytilenean debate in Thucydides. It's the original example of genocidal speech, accusation in the mirror. We have to kill them before they'll kill us. It is a paradigm example here. It's what we saw in Russia's invasion of Ukraine. They're an existential threat to us. They're an existential threat to our lives. And that's how they're not just presenting leftists that way. They're presenting LGBT communities that way. They're presenting those who inquire into our history that way. They're presenting university professors that way. Every single check mark of Latin American far right dictatorships. That's what we're facing here. You can say not to take this rhetoric seriously, but But Trump may be an opportunist, but DeSantis looks like a true ideologue. DeSantis, Marjorie Taylor Greene, they look like they truly believe it. So that whole rhetoric of you don't need to believe it, you don't need to take it seriously. I think people could say with Trump, well, it's Trump, he's an opportunist. We learned then he was serious. DeSantis is a true believer. The ideology, it's not just an opportunistic thing for him.
He's also done it, Jason. I mean, it's not like Donald Trump came from a TV background. DeSantis is saying, hey, elect me because of what I've done in Florida. And when we look at what he's done in Florida, as we have on this show, it's pretty authoritarian stuff. Jason, this week, the House voted to pass the debt ceiling and budget bill, with more Democrats backing the Republican Speaker's bill than Republicans. There's bipartisanship for you. But by acting like they can work together, aren't Democrats basically legitimizing, or at least normalizing, the neo-fascism emanating from the modern Republican Party, pretending all is normal in Washington, D.C., when it so isn't?
I think the worst is the media here. The media has been acting like this is some kind of show and competition for votes, when it's very clearly not. DeSantis has what he's done in Florida, imitating Russia's 2013 Gay Propaganda Act, where LGBT lives and perspectives have been entirely removed from the public sphere. The attack on universities, let's recall the United States as the world's greatest university system. They've just absolutely dismantled it. So none of this is rhetoric here. And the idea that this is some political game with DeSantis is absurd.
But Jason, you know me, I'm a ferocious critic of our media and colleagues of mine who do play both sides and don't take this stuff seriously. Having said that, let me just push back on something you said. You said it's the media more than Democrats. The problem is the political media follows cues given by politicians. And if the Democratic Party are not going to take this stuff seriously, then of course the media is not going to take it seriously either. And my problem here is, just in the past week, you have Ron DeSantis saying he had fired the FBI director and that the FBI and the DOJ are not independent of the White House. You have a Rolling Stone report suggesting Donald Trump might purge the FBI of any agents who investigated him, and Trump also publicly pledging to ignore the 14th Amendment and just scrap birthright citizenship if he's elected president again on day one. They're not hiding their fascist tendencies, and yet I don't see enough Democrats coming out in unison and saying, hold on, this is fascism, this is authoritarianism, don't normalize this stuff. Instead, I see Democrats saying, hey, look at us, we just did a deal with our friends across the aisle.
Cowardice is a problem. When you face an existential threat to democracy, cowardice is complicity. And history will remember this as complicity unless the Democrats very clearly name the threat. And they're not naming the threat. When President Biden did name the threat, or let's say semi-named the threat, he was attacked and he simply didn't do it again. History recalls figures who do that as complicit in the destruction of democracy. And as you say, the destruction of the possible jailing of leftists, imprisonment, etc.
Yeah, he was attacked by several members of his own Senate Democratic Party at the time.
It is Monday, the 5th of June of 2023, and you are in West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy. I am your chef de cuisine, Justice Putnam. Gunner the English Bulldog is our snoozing sous chef. Precious, the little Yorkie, is our door girl and will be seating you directly for our especially special daily special, River City Hash Mondays. That's right, because that's what we do. On Mondays, we put it all together and repurpose a lovely gourmet dish for your, culinary and intellectual delight. That's what we do at a salon. At least that's what I heard. So how are you after this fine weekend? We had a pretty nice weekend, quiet. Weather was quite pleasant, shall I say, though we do look like we're going to be having some possible thunderstorms in the offing. And I don't know if that's going to impact critical electrical infrastructure here, but it has before. So I only mention it so that if we happen to get knocked off the air, we will be back on directly, whatever that means. Okay, so I wanted to put on Mehdi Hassan's clip there from, I think it was Friday, on this violent political rhetoric. This, I think, has been called, it was Newert who coined the term eliminationism. I believe, if he didn't quote it, he wrote a book on it. And this is not anything new, of course. This has been going on since, maybe even before the first pogrom in Europe. And that was a long time ago. And it seems to have reared its ugly head once again, not just here in America, but on a worldwide scale. And we have some amuse-bouche here at the end at the chef's table, where we will take note of how the fight for democracy is a worldwide endeavor, because representative democracy, liberal democracies, as we like to call it, I suppose, is under a dire threat, and the sooner that we admit it, the better. There's going to be a lot of climate denialists out there. Oh, no, this is not what's happening. The weather's just fine. Just fine. But one does not need a weatherman to tell you which way the wind blows, does one? No, we don't. Well, why don't we go ahead and let the weatherman tell you what we have in store for you on the rest of the show on this fine River City Hash Mondays, as we begin in the Bistro Cafe of West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy. The outcry over a recycling plant next to a historic Watts High School appears to finally gain traction. Finally! The Temecula Valley, California School Board voted to leave over 11,000 students without a history book this year because it mentioned Harvey Milk. Well, I guess it's this upcoming year. Harvey Milk, yeah. Not even a paragraph. Just mentioned him. And the California Attorney General accused Florida of state-sanctioned kidnapping for trafficking over a dozen asylum seekers to Sacramento. After the break, we move to the chef's table, where an award-winning Hong Kong journalist won an appeal in a rare court ruling upholding media freedom in the territory. And hundreds of thousands of people marched in an anti-government protest in Warsaw, Poland, to show support for democracy. All that and more on West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy. Bon appetit. Near the bottom of our homepage at netrootsradio.com, to the right of the page, is the chat room link, and the chat room is monitored by Kelly Lincoln. Thank you, Kelly. Across the page to the left from that chat room link is the link to our Patreon site. And if you could afford to send us what you might spend on an espresso-type coffee drink, for instance, if you could afford to send those funds our way once a month and thus become a recurring Patreon of Netroots Radio, it really does help us pay our bills and all the other costs that are accumulated running this powerhouse of resistance. And we thank you to those of you who have been so generous over these many years in helping us fulfill our civic duty as the founders originally intended so many years ago. And we also give warm and hearty thanks to those of you who will consider doing so in the future, hopefully the near future. If you would like to follow Netroots Radio on Twitter, Mastodon, and Spoutable, you can do so at Netroots Radio. Tom takes care of that. Thanks, Tom. You can also follow me on Twitter at Justice Putnam, and also on Mastodon and Spoutable as well at Justice Putnam. I post the show notes and links diary on Daily Co's 10 minutes before showtime, but you can always find the show notes and links for any of the shows by finding my social media feed, and there are the links right there to all those show notes and links in the diaries. You can follow the show on Twitter at Cookbook West, and please do pick up podcasts by way of Spreaker, Stitcher, TuneIn, iHeart, YouTube, iTunes, and wherever podcasts can be found. Alrighty, this first offering here in the Bistro Cafe of West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy is by Marissa Evans, who is a staff writer for the Los Angeles Times. During her 4 years at Jordan High School, Genesis Cruz repeatedly sounded the alarm for fellow students about the metal recycling plant operating next to the historic Watts campus. At protests at the start of the school year and again in January, she tried to get them to understand that their situation is far from typical, that most campuses don't sit adjacent to a place facing allegations that it released sharp pieces of metal, smoke, fumes, and other hazards onto school grounds. A lot of them did take the information, and they did read about it, Genesis said, but I'm not really sure if it really caught their attention 100% to where they wanted to do something about it. But she expressed greater frustration with public officials who she felt have failed Watts on a major environmental justice issue. We're just used to disappointment, Genesis said. Yeah, we all are. No one ever really advocated for us. No one really stood up for us. People in Watts do advocate for themselves, but not many outsiders really consider us and do anything for us or help us. But now, 100 years after Jordan High opened, and nearly 75 years after S&W Atlas Iron and Metal Company arrived, the rising outrage, expressed by students, community groups, and others in recent years, appears to be gaining traction. The Los Angeles Unified School District filed a lawsuit against Atlas in 2020, asking a judge to stop the company from continuing to allow dangerous, sharp metal projectiles, fine metallic dust, and other objects to be launched or emitted from their property onto the Jordan campus. The LA City Attorney's Office also sued, and the State Department of Toxic Substances Control filed a complaint in LA County Superior Court last summer, asking a judge to order the recycling company to obey hazardous waste laws. Also last summer, authorities served Atlas Metals with a warrant as part of an investigation being conducted by the LA County District Attorney's Office's Bureau of Investigation. The legal actions have sparked negotiations involving Atlas, the City Attorney's Office, and the school district. A mediator and attorneys for all parties are projecting a completed settlement this year, according to court filings, though it is unclear whether that could lead to full shutdown of the facility In the meantime, the company has retained a consultant to look at its potential buyout valuation. At one point, metal was piled so high that students and teachers could see it from the campus. On April 26, U.S. District Judge Stanley Blumenfeld Jr. approved an agreement between Atlas and the L.A. Unified School District under which the company will reduce the height of its metal piles to a maximum of 10 feet and lower a protective wall made of shipping containers. LAUSD and Atlas agree, at least on a temporary basis, the safety wall is an added benefit for the school and should remain in place, attorneys wrote. The firm also agreed to suspend operations near the boundary between Atlas and the school softball fields during games. Well, that's nice. Attorneys for Atlas Metals noted in court documents that their client and the school district are negotiating how the company can potentially transition to becoming a drop yard, which is typically used for long-term storage of trucks and shipping containers. The attorney said Atlas would need to operate equipment and move scrap materials to make that happen, and that the safety wall will continue to be a beneficial enhanced barrier between the properties. Cruz said, "Loud noises have not been as frequent this school year as they were when she first started on the campus. The only time she would smell what she described as dirty oil was when she walked by Atlas Metals on the way to school." Matthew Weisenberg, vice president of Atlas, said in a statement that the ultimate goal to our company is to protect the students at Jordan High School while continuing to provide value to the residents in Watts. This is why we are directly engaged with the school district, working in good faith to find real solutions to the situation that secures the safety of the students and allows our family business to continue to be part of our community, Weisenberg said. Well, last week, the Coalition for Healthy Families, a community group focused on removing Atlas Metals from the area, released a letter addressed to President Biden, Governor Newsom, Mayor Karen Bass, and others, calling for more robust action. It is time to bring this injustice to an end, and it's time to inject significant resources into this community and others to right decades of chemical poisoning and neglect, the letter said. Here in the Bistro Cafe of West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy, River City Hash Mondays is by Leticia Juarez from KABC out of Los Angeles. A Temecula Valley School Board meeting last month ended in frustration for educators and community members in attendance. The frustration was over the 3-2 vote opposing the adoption of new social studies curriculum for Temecula Valley Unified School District elementary schools. The decision could leave 11,397 students without a textbook next year. We've never experienced this before. I've never heard of a top-performing district or any district say, you know what, we are going to withhold these materials, said Edgar Diaz, the president of the Temecula Valley Educator Association. School board members Dr. Joseph Komorowski, Jennifer Wurzma, and Danny Gonzalez opposed the inclusion of gay rights activist Harvey Milk in the supplemental material used by teachers, even though Milk was not in the fourth grade textbook himself. Milk, who was one of the first openly gay elected officials in the country, was assassinated while serving on the San Francisco Board of Supervisors. The 3 board members were elected last year with the backing of the conservative Inland Empire Family PAC. I don't want my third graders studying an LGBTQ issue. I don't want them going to intergender ideology, said board member Jennifer Wurzma. The social studies curriculum was vetted by 47 Temecula Valley teachers who taught the material in 18 elementary schools as part of a pilot program this past year. The material, which is also approved by the California Department of Education, will replace outdated textbooks. It was piloted. We followed every policy and procedure. The options were out there for parents. 1,300 families' kids learned from this curriculum. We did not receive any complaints, said board member Allison Barclay, who voted to approve the new curriculum. The 3-member majority also cited the lack of parental input for opposing the curriculum. According to officials at the meeting, Temecula Valley Unified School District and all 18 of the school sites did try to solicit input from parents with a survey, but less than a dozen answered it. Parents didn't respond. Whose fault is that? Parents didn't respond. It's their fault, not our fault, not the teacher's fault, said school board member Stephen Schwartz. Schwartz and Barkley voted to approve the new curriculum, noting the current books were no longer in print and did not meet the FAIR Act standards. They also warned failing to approve the new social studies curriculum could put the school board in violation of the Williams Act, which requires students to have equal access to school materials. Press brings us this last offering here in the Bistro Cafe of West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy. California's Attorney General said the state of Florida appears to have arranged for a group of South American migrants to be dropped off outside a Sacramento church. While this is still under investigation, we can confirm these individuals were in possession of documentation purporting to be from the government of the state of Florida, Bonta said in a statement late Saturday. The document said the migrants were transported through a program run by Florida's Division of Emergency Management and carried out by contractor Virtual Systems Company, said Tara Gallegos, a spokesperson for Bonta. Florida paid the same contractor $1.56 million last year to fly migrants from Texas to Martha's Vineyard and for a possible second flight to Delaware that never took place. The 16 migrants who arrived in Sacramento are from Colombia and Venezuela. They entered the U.S. through Texas. They were transported to New Mexico, then flown by a charter plane to California's capital, where they were then dropped off in front of the Roman Catholic Diocese of Sacramento, California officials said. They were approached outside a migrant center in El Paso, Texas, by people who offer them jobs and travel assistance, said Eddie Carmona of Pico, California, a faith-based group helping the migrants. They did not know they were being taken to Sacramento and arrived with few belongings, he said. Virtual Systems Company in the Florida Division of Emergency Management did not respond by Sunday to emails seeking comment. That was yesterday. Bonta said he is evaluating whether violations of civil or criminal law took place. While we continue to collect evidence, I want to say this very clearly. State-sanctioned kidnapping is not a public policy choice. It is immoral, and it is disgusting, Bonta said in a statement. Well, good. This is how we punch the Nazis. Well, at least one way. All right, let us now get to our break. And when we get back from that break, we will go through weather from around the world. And we will finish up with the stories that we've curated for you today. You are listening to West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy, and we will be right back.
You are listening to netrootsradio.com.
Please hang up and try again.
From a point at sea to the circles of your mind, a new force is at work for planetary transformation. New radio for a new Earth.
This is Take Two Movie Review. I'm Clinton Johnston. This week, to be careful or not. Nicole Holofcener wrote 2018's Can You Ever Forgive Me, starring Melissa McCarthy. Before that, she wrote and directed 2013's Enough Said, starring James Gandolfini and frequent collaborator Julie Louis-Dreyfus. And now she's directing one of her own screenplays again. It's fun slowly learning what You Hurt My Feelings is about. Holofcener takes a long time introducing you to this clutch of people in New York City who are apparently secure enough money-wise that they're free to spiral in on their own insecurities, the failings of their partners, and whether or not their creativity-based jobs work for them, since they clearly don't have to work for their jobs. And when the penny finally drops and you realize what issue the movie is going to turn on, Holofcener is well poised to steadily and confidently pay off all that she has set up. I've said before that it's hard for me to ignore my unsettledness when million-dollar actors and directors dress down to portray financially desperate people. Well, here's the opposite. People with money portraying people with money. But I just don't care about the life events and the concerns of these privileged, self-focused characters. Which begs the question. Rich people play poor people? Rich people play rich people? Can I ever be satisfied? I don't know. Maybe I'm more like these characters than I care to admit. Maybe Holofcener has struck something universal by telescoping into this very specific group, and that's that many of us are stuck seeing the world through our own little neurotic glasses. As we hear twice in the film, we know the world is falling apart, but we still blow so much energy caring about the things closer to us or that we just hold close to us. Anyway, You Hurt My Feelings is a deadpan, ironic comedy of neuroses that feels like updated mid-stage Woody Allen, minus the creepy, inappropriate relationships, and the guilt you feel from enabling the inappropriate relationships of a creep. Just, in case you care. This has been Take Two Movie Review. I'm Clinton Johnston. Catch up with us at TakeTwoMovieReview.com and feed us back on our channel on YouTube.
This program is presented by the Centers for Disease Control and Prevention.
Arthritis is common among veterans. Traumatic and overuse injuries during active duty are risk factors for developing arthritis. Fortunately, there are low-cost or no-cost strategies that can help veterans manage arthritis. Physical activity can reduce pain and improve function. It can also help improve mood and play a role in managing other chronic conditions, such as heart disease, diabetes, and obesity. You can do low-impact activities, such as walking, biking, swimming, and water aerobics, all good forms of exercise. Arthritis-specific classes can help you get started. Information on classes, exercise programs, and tools are available at cdc.gov/arthritis. These resources can help reduce pain and improve function. Learning self-management techniques can help all veterans become more active, improve their overall quality of life, and thrive.
For the most accurate health information, visit cdc.gov or call 1-800-CDC-INFO. This program is presented by the Centers for Disease Control and Prevention.
Welcome to A Cup of Health with CDC, a weekly feature of the MMWR, the Morbidity and Mortality Weekly Report. I'm your host, Dr. Kathleen Dooling. From a very young age, we're encouraged to eat fruits and vegetables. Unfortunately, many Americans are not getting the message. Dr. Seung-Hee Lee Kwon is with CDC's National Center for Chronic Disease Prevention and Health Promotion. She's joining us today to discuss the importance of eating enough fruits and vegetables. Welcome to the show, Seung-Hee.
Thank you for having me.
Seung-Hee, what is the recommended amount of fruits and vegetables?
The federal guidelines recommend that adults consume at least 1.5 cups to 2 cups of fruit and 2 to 3 cups of vegetables each day. This is for adults who get less than 30 minutes of physical activity a day. Adults who are more physically active need more calories and thus should be eating more fruits and vegetables. 1 cup is about 12 strawberries or 1 large tomato.
How many people consume the recommended amount of fruits and vegetables?
We found that very few adults are getting enough fruits and vegetables. Just 12% are eating the recommended amount of fruits, and less than 1 in 10 eat enough vegetables. And consumption is lower among men, young adults, and adults living in poverty.
Why is eating a diet rich in fruits and vegetables so important?
Eating a diet rich in fruits and vegetables can help with 3 things. 1, it can reduce the risk of many leading causes of illness and deaths, such as heart disease, type 2 diabetes, some cancers, and even obesity. It can also add important nutrients that are commonly missing in Americans' diet. And it can help with weight management if adults consume fruits and vegetables instead of other calorie-dense foods.
How can we meet the recommended daily intake of fruits and vegetables?
Try to fill half of your plate with fruits or vegetables at each meal or every eating occasion. Making fruits and vegetables the focal point of your meal will help you meet your recommendations. For example, recent studies have shown that adults get most of their fruit during breakfast and snacks. So you can try adding berries to your morning oatmeal or grab a piece of fresh fruit as an afternoon snack. For vegetables, most adults eat them at dinner, so try adding more into your lunch by adding a side salad or packing a snack of baby carrots or grape tomatoes.
Are canned or frozen products just as good as fresh?
All forms of fruits and vegetables count towards meeting the recommendations. For the most health benefits, make sure that the fruits and vegetables you consume have a limited amount of salt, butter, sugar, or creamy sauces. When selecting canned fruits, choose the ones with lowest sugars. And for canned or frozen vegetables, choose those lower in sodium.
Where can listeners get more information about eating a healthy diet?
Listeners can go to cdc.gov/nutrition or choosemyplate.gov.
Thanks, Seung-Hee. I've been talking today with Seung-Hee Lee Kwon about the importance of eating a healthy diet. Eating a diet rich in fruits and vegetables can help reduce the risk of many leading causes of illness and death and add important nutrients to your diet. Make sure you're eating enough. Until next time, be well. This is Dr. Kathleen Dooling for A Cup of Health with CDC.
For the most accurate health information, visit cdc.gov or call 1-800-CDC-INFO.
Wouldn't it be great if life came with a remote control? You know, you could hit pause when you needed to, or hit rewind. Like that time you knocked down that wasp's nest.
Uh-oh.
Or that time you forgot to roll up your windows in the car wash.
Fantastic.
Yeah, a remote control would have come in handy then. Well, life doesn't always give you time to change the outcome, but prediabetes does. With early diagnosis and a few healthy changes like managing your weight, getting active, stopping smoking, and eating healthier, you can stop prediabetes before it leads to type 2 diabetes. It's easy to learn your risk. Take the 1-minute test today at doihaveprediabetes.org. Life doesn't come with a remote control. Yikes! So you're on your own with the wasps. You have the power to take control of prediabetes. Visit doihaveprediabetes.org today. That's doihaveprediabetes.org. Brought to you by the Ad Council and its Prediabetes Awareness Partners.
If you came across someone struggling with hunger, how would you recognize them? By their clothes? Their age? The way they speak? Would you notice an 8-year-old girl who's not excited for summer break
because she may not be having lunch again until September?
Or a single father of 2 who works 3
part-time jobs and still can't put enough food on the table?
Or maybe a mother who cleans offices at night,
hoping to find meeting leftovers to take home to her hungry family.
Or a war veteran who's having a hard time
landing a job and getting back on his feet.
I am the 1 in 8 Americans who struggle with hunger. People you pass by every day but never knew were hungry. I am hunger in America.
Hunger can be hard to recognize. Learn why at IamHungerInAmerica.org. Brought to you by Feeding America, 200 Food Banks Strong, and the Ad Council.
Hi, I'm Tom Hartman, and since you're listening to netrootsradio.com, show your progressive side and go to the donate button on the bottom of the homepage. It's progressives like you who power Netroots Radio and keep the progressive message beaming everywhere 24 hours a day. Just go to our donate button at the bottom of netrootsradio.com. Thank you for keeping progressive radio at full power.
Welcome to 60 Second Civics from the Center for Civic Education. I'm Mark Gage. Today, we launch a special week-long series of Pride Week podcasts with our special guest, Christopher R. Riano, the president of the Center for Civic Education and co-author, along with William Eskridge of Marriage Equality, From Outlaws to In-Laws. Christopher, what were the Stonewall riots and why are they seen as such an important milestone in the LGBTQ plus rights movement?
You know, it's incredible to think about how a series of really spontaneous events and demonstrations by members of the LGBTQ community, particularly people of color and transgender individuals, that really began as a response to a police raid on June 28th of 1969 and went on for a couple different evenings after that, really became the first real time that members of the LGBTQ community rose up in Greenwich Village here in Manhattan and decided that they wanted to fight for the gay liberation movement and really began the 20th century fight for LGBTQ rights here in the United States after facing so much oppression and an anti-gay legal system for the 1950s and 1960s. It's truly incredible that following much of the civil rights movement of the 1960s and following in the footsteps of that movement and much of what was the anti-Vietnam War movement, the influences began to truly bubble up in Greenwich Village on those hot summer nights in late June and early July of 1969, which kicks off a whole series of over 50 years that eventually culminates in the changes that we've seen today.
Thank you so much for joining us today, Christopher. That's all for today's podcast. Thank you to our sponsor, T-Mobile, the leader in 5G.
Danger, danger, go back, go back. Books ahead.
Listen up. This matters. I'm Louis Black, and this is the Civil Liberties Minute with ACLU attorney Bill Newman.
Escambia County, Florida, has been sued for banning books in its school libraries. Among the books, Tango Makes Three, the award-winning children's book, a true story about a penguin family in the Central Park Zoo with two fathers, a situation apparently not a biggie in the penguin world. So far, the school committee has removed 10 books, including Tango, contrary to the recommendation of the expert review committee, which said keep the books on the shelves. But the school committee didn't, and in fact, changed the policy about what happens to books that have been approved that are being challenged. A challenge book used to stay put during the review process. Now, books being challenged are indefinitely quarantined in a restricted area in the school library that children cannot enter without prior parental permission, an obvious disincentive that raises a kind of penguin and the egg problem. How can kids check out a book or ask for parental permission if they can't hold it in their hands and look at it? As Suzanne Nossel, the CEO of PEN America, one of the plaintiffs in the lawsuit, said, this school district offers a vivid and disturbing example of what's happening across the country with politically motivated, ideologically driven, viewpoint-based bans on books.
The Civil Liberties Minute is made possible by the American Civil Liberties Union because freedom can't defend itself.
I'm Rick Smith, and this is Labor History in 2.
On this day in labor history, the year was 1947. That was the day that Secretary of State George Marshall delivered a speech at Harvard University. In his speech, Marshall made a call for the United States to send assistance to European countries devastated by World War II. He declared, quote, "The truth of the matter is that Europe's requirements for the next 3 or 4 years of foreign food and other essential products, principally from America, are so much greater than her present ability to pay that she must have substantial additional help or face economic, social, and political deterioration of a very grave character." His speech became the basis for the European Recovery Program, or what became known as the Marshall Plan. The goal of the plan was to boost the morale of the Europeans, while strengthening trade ties between the U.S. and Europe. There was great fear among leaders in the United States that economic instability would cause European countries to turn towards communism. Through the Marshall Plan, the United States sent aid in the form of grants, loans, and technical assistance. Much of the money went to purchase food and manufactured goods produced in the United States and sent to Europe. This demand helped to keep the American economy booming. In all, more than $13 billion in aid was sent to 16 European countries. Some European labor unions objected to American intervention in Europe as part of the plan. This caused contention between different European labor organizations. As some unions affiliated more closely with the communists, others aligned themselves with the West. The Cold War had taken its toll on labor solidarity.
Labor History in 2 brought to you by the Illinois Labor History Society and The Rick Smith Show. For more information, go to laborhistoryin2.com.
Thank you for accompanying us here to the chef's table at West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy River City Hash Mondays. We always begin weather from around the world along the banks of the Rogue River and the Rogue River Valley of Southern Oregon on the west coast of the continental United States of America, where it is currently 62 degrees Fahrenheit, expecting highs in the low to mid 90s, sunny to partly cloudy throughout the day with winds out of the northwest at 5 to 10 miles per hour, a few clouds overnight, lows in the upper 50s with winds out of the west-northwest at 5 to 10 miles per hour, and then generally sunny tomorrow despite a few afternoon clouds. A stray shower or thunderstorm is possible with highs in the mid-90s, winds out of the northwest at 5 to 10 miles per hour. Grass pollen is rated very high here in Rogue River proper. The air quality index for the region is in the good range at 20 parts per million, and that daytime UV index is very high at level 9, so do take care. Barometric pressure is falling at 29.94 inches. Visibility is up to 9 miles, and relative humidity is at 59%. Weather from around the world is brought to you by a crowd of crowdsourced weather stations that a crowd crowdsources from around the world. London is 63 degrees and partly cloudy. Paris is 80 degrees and sunny. Rome is 77 and partly cloudy. Kyiv is 73 and mostly cloudy. Kabul is 70 degrees and clear. Hong Kong is 84 and partly cloudy. Tokyo is 68 and clear. Sydney, Australia is 52 degrees and cloudy. San Francisco, California is 56 degrees and cloudy. And New York is 70 degrees Fahrenheit and fair. And that is weather from around the world. Brought to you by a crowd of crowdsourced weather stations that a crowd crowdsources from around the world. Janice Lung of the Associated Press brings us this first amuse-bouche here at the Chef's Table at West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy. River City Hash Mondays. An award-winning Hong Kong journalist won an appeal quashing a conviction related to research for an investigative documentary in a rare court ruling upholding media freedom in the Chinese territory. Bao Choi was found guilty in April of 2021 of deceiving the government by getting vehicle ownership records for journalistic purposes after she had declared in her online application that she would use the information for other traffic and transport-related issues. The investigative journalist was trying to track down perpetrators of a mob attack on protesters and commuters inside a train station during massive anti-government protests in 2019 for her documentary. Choi was fined 6,000 Hong Kong dollars, the equivalent of $765 US, for 2 counts of making false statements at that time, and called it a very dark day for all journalists in Hong Kong. That ruling also sparked outrage among local journalists over the city's shrinking press freedom. Judges at the city's top court unanimously ruled in Choi's favor in a written judgment, quashing her conviction and setting aside the sentence. Choi told reporters outside the court that she was happy to learn about the judgment, saying it had stated the importance of the city's constitutionally protected freedom of press and speech. The story Choi co-produced, titled 721, Who Owns the Truth, won the Chinese Language Documentary Award at the Human Rights Press Awards in 2021. The judging panel hailed it as an investigative reporting classic that had chased the smallest clues, interrogating the powerful without fear or favor.
Je te donne ce mon amour pour la vie entière, la promesse de me trouver à tes genoux. Aussitôt que tu m'appelles, rester toujours fidèle, c'est tout, c'est tout. Je te donne tous mes printemps, mes étés de mer, mes automnes quand les feuilles tombent partout. Si ce n'est pas une bonne affaire, je te donne tous mes hivers.
Vanessa Guerra of the Associated Press brings us this last amuse-bouche here at the Chef's Table at West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy. Hundreds of thousands of people marched in an anti-government protest in Poland's capital yesterday, Sunday, with citizens traveling from across the country to voice their anger at officials who they say have eroded democratic norms and created fears that the nation is following Hungary and Turkey down the path to autocracy. Warsaw Mayor Rafał Trzaskowski, who belongs to the opposition party that led the march, estimated that 500,000 people took part. The Onet news portal estimated there were at least 300,000. Large crowds also gathered in Krakow and other cities across the nation of 38 million people, showing frustration with a government that critics accuse of violating the Constitution and eroding fundamental rights in Poland. Former President Lech Walesa, the leader of the Solidarity movement that played a historic role in toppling communism in Poland, marched alongside the leader of the opposition Civic Platform Party, ex-Prime Minister Donald Tusk. Walesa and Tusk are reviled by the ruling Law and Justice Party led by Kaczynski, and the Warsaw crowd chanted democracy and constitution. The rally started at Prime Minister Mateusz Morawiecki's office and ended up at the Royal Castle, where Tusk hailed the turnout and pledged to fight to win an autumn election. Well, that brings us to the end of our broadcast period for the day, but you do know Netroots Radio broadcasts on, and we will meet up here tomorrow for Tarrytown Chowder Tuesdays. So do stay tuned to Netroots Radio all day and all night for all the breaking news as it breaks, and we will meet up here tomorrow, right here in West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy. Bon appetit.
Je voudrais du soleil vert, des dentelles et des théières, des photos de bord de mer, dans mon jardin d'hiver. Je voudrais de la lumière, comme en Nouvelle-Angleterre. Je veux changer d'atmosphère, dans mon jardin d'hiver. Robe à fleurs, sous la pluie de novembre, tes mains qui courent, je n'en peux plus de t'attendre. Les années passent, qu'il est loin, là je tombe. Nul ne peut nous entendre. Je voudrais du Fred Astaire, revoir un latte Goël. Je voudrais toujours te plaire dans mon jardin d'hiver. Je veux déjeuner par terre, comme au long de golfe clair, t'embrasser les yeux ouverts dans mon jardin d'hiver. Robe à fleurs, sous la pluie de novembre, tes mains qui courent, je n'en peux plus de t'attendre. Les années passent, il est loin, là je tombe. Nul ne peut nous entendre. Ba-da-da-dum-dee-da-dum, 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 dans mon jardin d'hiver. Ba-da-da-dum-dee-da-dum, 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 dans mon jardin d'hiver. Dans mon jardin d'hiver, dans mon jardin d'hiver.